Hello, my name's Anne Bell. I'm one of the subject specialists at the PSHE Association. Welcome to the fourth episode of the PSHE Association's Ask a Subject Specialist video series, in which we're responding to questions on PSHE sent in by our members. Unsurprisingly, we've had a number of queries on relationships and sex education, or RSE, given the recent statutory changes. So in today's episode, we'll be covering age-appropriate RSE, addressing pornography, and supporting colleagues reluctant to teach RSE. We'll also be looking at guidance available to support police visitors to the classroom and planning SEND provision. So let's take a look at our first question. What guidance is there for RSE and what is appropriate for each age range, particularly when discussing pleasure? Age-appropriate planning is a really common focus for questions on our training days, so we know this is something that a lot of teachers have concerns about. So I'm going to provide some general advice first of all, then focus in on the particular specific aspect this member is most concerned with. As with all planning and PSHE education, we'd recommend colleagues consider the statutory guidance and our programme of study for further details on what content is phase appropriate. The statutory guidance is broken down into phases, and our non-statutory programme of study breaks this down further into key stages. Our programme builders then provide broad illustrations of what might be appropriate in different year groups. Our programme builders can be found at this link and cover key stages 1 to 4. These summarise overarching themes from the programme of study and signpost relevant resources. We then suggest teachers use pupil voice to determine what pupils most need and what is appropriate in your setting. In a city cohort, will have very different needs to those of pupils in a market town faith school, for example. The Sex Education Forum also published a helpful curriculum design document which features a range of questions young people might need to be able to answer at different ages. This may be a helpful starting point for those looking to consider what is age appropriate in their setting. We provide a range of materials on RSE, but I know that colleagues often find the RSE scheme of work created in collaboration with Medway Public Health Directorate particularly helpful, as it shows what the outlines from the programme builder might look like in practice for key stages 1 to 3. However, it's worth remembering that those were designed to suit pupils in the Medway district, so were tailored to their needs using understanding of local contexts and local data. They were also written before the statutory guidance was released, so it's important to adapt materials according to recent updates and your setting context. Regarding the member's focus on pleasure and what is age appropriate, we need to first think about the rationale behind the programme of study references to this aspect at key stages 4 and 5. Firstly, let's remember that this is not just about physical pleasure. This includes how relationships should feel good, enjoyable, fulfilling, and feature different ways people show affections. If we only work in the realms of teaching young people to be wary of STIs and of people trying to have sex without their consent, we undermine for students the prospect of loving, fun and trusting relationships which feature positive sexual encounters. At its core, these references are aimed at the safeguarding message that sex is supposed to feel pleasurable, not painful, pressured, or like someone is doing something just because they think they should. The learning opportunities, therefore, are best seen as a careful reminder to take a positive approach that sets healthy, realistic relationship expectations. Discussions around pleasure are often a helpful counterpoint when discussing pornography, which tends to feature unrealistic and unequal portrayals of sexual encounters. Such materials often miss the importance of exploration and checking in around whether something feels good for all parties, which in turn can create myths and unrealistic expectations around sex and relationships, which we need to counter. Teachers may wish to raise the fact that different people will have different experiences that they enjoy, and that this is normal. We'd recommend such learning is embedded in appropriate context within your PSHE education curriculum. Quality assured resources on consent and pornography from trusted organisations like the PSHE Association and the NSPTC are linked to directly from our programme builders. These provide more detail on what these learning opportunities might look like in practice. So for our next question, a related query from a member on pornography. Let's explore this further. I'm about to start teaching pornography for the first time. Where do I start? Well, hopefully our colleague already has a good understanding of RSE practice, perhaps through attending one of our training days on effective RSE. If not, I'd want to ensure they have effective understanding of safe RSE delivery before addressing this topic area. I'd then suggest that our addressing pornography through PSHE education guidance is the best first port of call. This provides a deeper understanding of the issues and the types of learning which are relevant and age appropriate on this potentially sensitive topic. Within the secondary phase, under the heading of Online and Media on page 28 of the new statutory guidance, it requires that pupils know the impact of viewing harmful content, and that sexually explicit material presents a distorted picture of sexual behaviours, can damage the way people see themselves in relation to others, and negatively affect how they behave towards sexual partners. So we know that such learning is expected in schools by the end of the secondary phase, but the extent of such learning is determined by individual schools. In our briefing document, we emphasise the need to help young people see that such materials can skew expectations of future relationships so that they can make informed decisions around viewing any content they may be exposed to. We therefore also need to help students develop the skills to manage situations where they prefer to not see pornographic materials, but are facing barriers to living within their values, such as being passed pornographic content by friends or coming across graphic pop-ups or social media posts, for example. Colleagues often wonder if it is appropriate to teach about pornography, but a recent BBFC report found that half of 11 to 13-year-olds had seen pornography, rising to 2/3 of 14 to 15-year-olds. So even those who perhaps would not choose to investigate may have seen it inadvertently. And we know that many mainstream media types contain sexualized imagery and messaging which will be affecting young people in any event. So it's crucial that we find a way to tackle this topic area appropriately so our relationships and sex education is relevant for the world young people are growing up in today. The guidance provides further detail about the learning which is appropriate and constructive to help young people navigate intimate relationships positively. It probably goes without saying that there is no need to show explicit material to support delivery of this topic, and there are clear legal and moral barriers to doing so. But this is a particular risk when using video clips, perhaps from news stories, documentaries, or sensationalised factual or soap-based programmes. View these very carefully before use to ensure any materials meet expectations within your school policy and meet safe practice guidelines. As with all PSHE education, pupil questions should be distanced. They should never be asked directly if they have seen pornography, which could lead to inappropriate classroom disclosures. Instead, asking what pupils view as appropriate for younger pupils can elicit more reflective views about the relative harms of pornography. We must also avoid approaches that normalise use of pornography or make gendered assumptions. It's important we don't tell pupils it's common or imply it's expected that they will have seen pornography. We should ensure teaching is inclusive and avoid making out that this is exclusively a male issue, as this is unhelpful and not backed up by the research. Ensure signposting advice activities are non-shaming and supportive. We don't know who may have already viewed pornography. A scenario-based approach can help students consider the wider implications of pornography use. For example, using scenarios where both people in a relationship feel pressure to conform to certain expectations, not because they're directly putting pressure on one another, but because of having internalized messages from pornography, can be particularly helpful. It's really important that before teaching any RSE content, but particularly those aspects which may be considered particularly sensitive, that teachers are clear on what the school's position is on the approach, ethos, content and resources used to deliver such topics. Further guidance on creating a robust RSE policy is available in our Writing Your School's RSE Policy guidance. Using quality assured materials can help teachers feel secure that the resources have been thoroughly checked by specialists to minimise the risk of inappropriate messaging. The BBFC lesson pack can support teaching around this issue, and the Medway materials we featured earlier also have a Year 9 lesson on relationship expectations related to pornography and sending nudes. The Making Sense of Relationships NSPCC lesson pack written in collaboration with the association, features a Key Stage 4 lesson specifically on pornography and the related sex and relationships expectations. As with any resource, it's important to think about whether it is appropriate for your students, using baseline information and student voice. But these materials may help you to ensure the tone and key messages used follow best practice principles and are in line with research. Talking of which, colleagues may be interested in reading the more detailed research base on addressing this topic. This is linked to on the same web page as the guidance itself. You may also want to get ahead of any potentially tricky questions by thinking about what students might ask and how to handle those questions. This may involve discussion with senior colleagues and should involve reference to any school RSE policy. I hope that gives some useful pointers to colleagues in a similar position to our member who posed that question. Given the potential pitfalls we've been talking about, sometimes teachers can be reluctant to deliver RSE, as this question suggests. How do I manage a situation where a colleague doesn't want to deliver RSE? It's a real shame that colleagues feel like this, as it's often a topic that both students and teachers enjoy exploring. It's also an opportunity to play a role in helping young people to develop healthy relationships, which is a real privilege. Throughout my time managing PSHE, I very rarely found colleagues who took up the challenge to deliver RSE regretted their decision, and most felt increased confidence in their teaching skills in general as a result of delivery of this important topic area. However, there are colleagues for whom delivery is a real concern, and this needs to be respected. We know that many secondary colleagues are asked to teach PSHE as an add-on due to gaps in their timetable, which can lead to particular issues around certain topics like RSE. So let's look at how we can manage this challenge from a practical point of view. It's worth mentioning that many teacher contracts are quite general, so may include or imply an expectation to deliver other subjects when needed. Most teachers' contracts would therefore not provide an automatic right to opt out of teaching RSE. So schools would need to make informed decisions about how best to deploy their staff, bearing in mind that forcing a colleague to deliver a topic they find challenging can have serious impacts on staff morale and the effective delivery of PSHE education. We know that poor delivery can do more harm than good, and we also need to respect staff's religious views. Religion or belief is a protected characteristic within the Equality Act, so schools have a duty to take this into account. It is therefore really important to find a way to work together to find the best solutions, as we all want to support and respect both colleagues and young people. So first off, it's really important to find out why the colleague is reluctant to deliver RSE. It could simply be that training or peer teaching would support that staff member's confidence levels, and indeed would recommend that all staff delivering this important topic are given the proper training to do so well. It takes practice to build up confidence and expertise when doing something new. There are things we can do to help colleagues new to the subject to develop, such as peer teaching or inviting colleagues to observe more experienced staff. Ensuring colleagues new to delivering RSE are timetabled with younger classes who may not require such sophisticated discussions around challenging topic areas is an important step in helping colleagues build up their confidence and skills in RSE delivery gradually. Where this isn't possible, consider whether a more confident RSE teacher can switch to deliver the RSE unit of work, or whether a colleague or school nurse could team deliver the session, which has the benefit of upskilling the colleague for future years. In some settings, classes have been joined together to aid delivery, as long as the class size as if doing so would not be a barrier to effective learning. Hopefully that gives you some ideas around how to manage the situation. This often comes down to having a longer-term effective leadership and management strategy that raises the profile of PSHE education, encourages effective timetabling up front, and prioritises the upskilling of staff. This is covered within our leadership and management training for both primary and secondary phases if you'd like to learn more. Another question. I've been asked to invite a police officer into school to talk to students about the law, but I've never worked with them before. Is it a good idea? This is such a pertinent question, given that our research into recent collaboration project with the police is due for publication soon. Firstly, it's important to take a step back and consider best practice in the incorporation of visitors into a PSHE education programme in general. Visitors are a great complement to a PSHE programme, as they add diversity of pupil experience and expertise into PSHE lessons. They also encourage improved relationships with those in our wider school community. Our recent research suggests that when done well, police visits to PSHE classrooms can promote a better relationship between young people and the police, which can be really valuable community-wide. But we need to be really clear on what it is we are looking for a visitor to bring to our programme, and to consider whether they are best placed to deliver the learning on a particular issue. Equally, a string of visitors on different topic areas is unlikely to have a positive long-term impact, so any visit needs to be well planned and considered as part of a wider PSHE and wellbeing provision. We've put together a detailed guidance document exploring good practice in the use of visitors, which outlines this further, and provides a helpful checklist to support both teachers and visitors when considering a visit. We've also recorded a related podcast which viewers may be interested in. Just search our site for visitors in the search bar and you'll find what you need. The police have a lot of expertise around the practical interpretation of the law and can share illustrations of the risks and consequences of certain behaviours. This can add value to a PSHE programme if done well, but it's important to review what precisely officers can bring to enhance your programme. There are also practical considerations when bringing in officers who may have a range of duties and local priorities to consider. Many teachers review the logistical implications of having police officers visiting many different classes at the secondary phase, for example, and determine that an assembly is the best way to achieve learning aims, as this ensures everyone gets to hear the relevant messages. However, this is not always the best approach, as a short assembly for hundreds of students rarely provides the depth of exploration necessary to have the impact intended. So we'd recommend that staff read the detailed exploration of this issue in our Police in the Classroom handbook before making a final decision. Within the handbook, there is also advice on ensuring visiting police officers and staff are aware of how to approach the lessons to safely achieve the learning intentions. Officers may benefit from reviewing our guidance document in order to support safe practice. Remember, the police deal with some very difficult situations day in, day out, and so may inadvertently scare young people if they aren't given the time to reflect on what safe and effective classroom practice looks like. And remember, the class teacher is always in charge of the learning and should be present throughout any organised session. In short, I'd suggest reviewing our Police in the Classroom document to inform your decisions about how best to draw on the police force's expertise. And now for our final question. What support is available for PSHE planning for pupils with SEND? Again, this is a really common question, as differentiation is incredibly important to keep learning relevant for our pupils. The main place to see support directly aimed at colleagues supporting pupils with SEND is the SEND Hub on our website. This hosts key materials and advice and will soon feature examples shared by our fantastic colleagues working in SEND settings. In July, we published an update to our popular planning framework for pupils with SEND. This can be used in a variety of different ways to support planning, as well as assess pupils' progress. Keep an eye out for differentiated resources and practical suggestions to support inclusion in all our lesson packs. The examples here are illustrations from our recently released drug education resources. Colleagues can, of course, contact us at the Association for resource recommendations related to specific topic areas, and we'll do our best to help. The SEND Hub also features a video recording of a guidance webinar from the Department for Education. Don't forget, we also provide specific training and one-to-one support for colleagues who'd like to gain extra input to support their planning. That's the end of our session today. I hope you found it useful and have been able to take away some interesting hints and tips. As always, if you have any pressing questions, do please contact us directly via our main email account, info@psheassociation.org.uk. Thanks for listening, and do visit our website for all the latest PSHE Association releases and related news.